Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up with me, Rachel King. This is where we leave convention at the courtroom door and dive into the real stories, bold opinions, and the change-making ideas that the legal world often keeps quiet. I'm here to shake up the system, share unfiltered insights, and amplify voices that need to be heard. So are you ready? Let's get it. Gavels down and voices up.
Today, we are going to talk about the modern family and law. My name's Rachel King. I am a strategic litigator, and I see families everywhere, all kinds of families. In fact, I've been told that I do the family dramas of litigation. So today, let's talk about family, how it has changed over the years, and whether we as a society and through the law are really addressing the needs of the new family, the modern family. I would be remiss if I did not mention the show Modern Family. Oh my gosh, it was one of my favorites. And it was really a show that illustrated what a family looks like now. Of course, that show started years ago, and the idea and concept of family is ever evolving, not only with societal shifts, but also as younger generations become the family producing generation. So what Gen Z is considering a family is going to be super important. What they are looking for when they define family and when they define that part of their life is really going to be important. And then here in the not so distant future, I can't believe it because I have Gen Alpha children, the Gen Alphas are going to be coming in. So right now, as we look through family and what this idea of family is, we're really looking at a huge amount of generations, primarily boomers. Then we have Gen X's, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alphas. The Gen Alphas are still pretty young, but man, time flies. They are going to be creating their own idea of family. And it's fair to say that while we don't know what the Gen Alpha's idea of family is, it's going to be different than what we consider families right now in 2024. The one thing that is guaranteed is that this idea of family is ever changing, and we've really seen that through the years. Of course, the definition of family has evolved, what families look like, and how people are creating and defining their family. With that, the law has changed. Some of the legal concepts have changed, and judges are forced to consider what the family looks like, what we, the people, have defined the family. That doesn't always mean that judges get it right. And in fact, I've spoken about this quite regularly, that the law seems to always be one step behind. Why? Well, one, it's a kind of a slow process, but really the law exists because the people don't like something and they need a change, so they push the change. And it's only after they push the change that there's laws that are created or enacted. And that is what changes or causes the law. The law is by definition almost always going to be one step behind. So what are we doing in this episode? Let's talk about the family shift, what families looked like, what they look like now, and maybe where they're going, where the law is. And I'm so interested to know where you think the law is really failing us, where there could be some movement to improve the laws, specifically where it comes to families. I don't think it goes, it should be no surprise that if we go back in time, right? I'm not even going to try and guess. But if we go back in time, the definition of family was a husband and a wife and children. We had that nuclear family that was very traditional. Anything outside of that was really not accepted. If you had a child outside of wedlock, man, it was considered a bastard child, and the law couldn't even come into play. Many times bastard children couldn't even inherit. I use that term because that is what they were recognized as. Children outside of wedlock had a certain position, and it was not what we would consider a child today. Back then, the family really consisted of husband, wife, and the children. Then we see this movement of whether we should be accepting children that are outside of wedlock. And I think at least in this day and age, we are comfortable confidently saying that if you have a child, they are your child, whether you are married or not. And that is for so many reasons. We also saw a shift that the marriage didn't necessarily have to be between a husband and wife, but that different people could come together to form the heads of the household to fill what was traditionally the mother and the father role. And then same with children. Children could be of either one of the parents. Divorce rates went up. So now we have blended families that have come into play. We have adopted children that have come into play. We've really seen a huge shift in what is considered family from a very narrow definition of mom, dad, and children to now really anybody that you want to consider your family can be considered family, at least from a societal standpoint. Even your friends we're now seeing called auntie, grandparents that are maybe not natural grandparents. By natural, I mean blood related. And so we really have community coming in and filling some of those roles that were previously very traditional and set by a bloodline. Okay, but that doesn't really help us, right? So we have these blended families, as we have children that are of the marriage, children that are from a previous relationship, children that are from outside of a relationship, children that are adopted. We have same-sex marriages. We have, oh my gosh, my mind is flooding so many with the different kinds of families that we have. We have people getting divorced and then remarried later with adult children. We have people not getting married at all and having kids and living what would be arguably defined as a marital type relationship. You're not legally married, but for all intents and purposes, you are acting as a married couple, right? Sometimes partnerships, people have their preference on what they call those kind of relationships. I consider them cohabitation relationships. Still considered a family unit, and the law has to adjust. Before, it was very traditional that the wife would stay home, husband would go to work. Divorce was so poo-pooed. But when we did move into sort of accept divorce, the kids would go with mom because mom was the stay-at-home person, the primary caregiver. They were considered better with mom. Dad would continue to go off and go to work and be the financial support. We've ebbed and flowed, and we're really at a place that I know many people will disagree with me at, but there is a societal push, and even the courts and the laws are reflecting that children need to have both parents in their life. Hands down, they need to have both parents. If they don't have both parents, there's a huge void that they end up having to deal with for the rest of their life that will continue to affect their adulthood. To the extent that we can, that's reasonably safe, we try and have laws in place that will allow both parents to have as much time with their children as possible. We allow children to inherit, whether they are out of wedlock, in wedlock, adopted, whatever the case may be. Sometimes even stepchildren can inherit under the law. So we've really opened this idea of what a child is and what a child can expect from their parent quite a bit.
And now for a quick break. This episode of Gabbles Down, Voices Up is proudly brought to you by King Law Firm, Attorneys at Law Incorporated. We're not just about winning cases, we're about making a difference. Whether it's family law, probate litigation, or standing up against elder abuse, we bring experience, empathy, and excellence to the courtroom. At King Law Firm, we're more than lawyers. We're your team, in your corner, advocating for your rights and making your voice heard. Visit us at thelawyerking.com and on the socials at The Lawyer King to see how we can fight for you and with you. King Law Firm, Attorneys at Law Incorporated, where your fight becomes our fight. Now let's get back to today's episode.
We have extended the laws to allow women to own property, which is shocking that at one point women couldn't even own bank accounts and they were completely financially reliant. And we've made it a shift. More and more women are financially independent, aren't so reliant on child support or spousal support from their ex, if you will. There's also laws in different jurisdictions that say, if you split up, you're expected to become self-supporting. So we really do have this idea of financial independence. And though I represent all sorts of people, maybe no surprise because I am financially independent, I do work I'm a really big believer in financial independence. That doesn't necessarily mean that in your family law situation, child support or spousal support isn't necessary or warranted. But I just think more than from a financial standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, and from just seeing how people survive and weather a divorce and how fast they can get on their feet, the road to financial independence helps tremendously. Some of the things, though, that I think are really lacking, one of the big problems that I see as an attorney, and I know we're trying to figure out how to resolve this, are families that do not get legally married. This is tricky, right? Because we don't typically have common law marriage anymore. There's a few places that have common law marriage, but for the most part, we don't have common law marriage. I'm going to give you a real quick 30-second tutorial on common law marriage. So common law marriage existed in the past where if you acted as husband and wife and put out as husband and wife for a certain period of time and did certain things, then you would be considered legally married. The reason that we had common law marriage is because there was horseback riding as your main mode of transportation. Courthouses were really far away. And for a lot of people who wanted to be married, it's just frankly wasn't feasible for them to go get a marriage license and become legally married. It was like, all right, you can't do that because it's so far away. You have to go over 3 mountain ranges in the winter, whatever. So we're just going to consider you married. Now you fast forward to today, one of the reasons that common law is almost completely gone is that it's so easy to get married if you want to. You go down to your courthouse, you pay a small fee, you sign a marriage license, and they'll marry you right there. You don't have to have a wedding. I think in Las Vegas, there's a drive-through ceremony. So the thought is, if you really want to get married, there's no reason that you can't get married. And so the people that do intend to be legally married go out and do it. If you don't take that very easy step to become legally married, you don't want to be married, and you shouldn't get the marital protections. But here is one of the problems. When you have two people right now under the law that create a life together, not married, maybe one person buys the house and puts it in their name, but they're both contributing financially to the household. One person stays home with the child, the other one goes to work. They have this mutual agreement, very similar to the decisions that happen in a marriage, and then they split. There's no laws to protect everything that they built. For example, the house typically goes to the persons whose name is on it, even if you made financial contributions. Same with spousal support. Maybe you just don't get it. Maybe you did have the decision to spend 20 years at home raising children and you cannot get employed to be self-supporting immediately and you need that kind of cushion. You don't get it. You don't get the marital protections. So what do we do in that kind of situation? I don't know that there's an answer, but I think it's something that really needs to be understood because I'm getting more and more calls from people saying, here's what we did. Now we're splitting up. I'm like, I'm sorry, you don't go to family law. You can go to civil court and sue your ex because you paid for half of the mortgage and you can see where that goes, but that's going to be covered under civil law, not marital law. And marital law has different laws and is a court of equity. And a court of equity is trying to be fair. So under fairness, while you paid for half of the mortgage, the entire marriage, it would be fair for you to get half of the equity. We don't fall into that when you're not married. That's not the case. So these, as we move through and we have family dynamics change, and we have family constructs change and evolution, and who's going to be staying home and who's going to be making more money, whatever those choices are, what legal reforms need to come into place? What would be helpful? How do we address the situation of child custody, visitation, and support where we're really now in a society where it's almost required that both parents work in order to be financially afloat? What do we do when people are getting married less and less often? What do we do when people have children on a Tinder hookup and can never find that parent again? Whose obligation is this? What role do we have as individuals in society? What role do we expect or do we want the laws to make? So many changes, so many things, and it's so exciting to watch the evolution of family. Truly, it takes a village. I'm a big believer that the more love that we can all have in our life, the better, especially when it's kids involved. I tell all of my clients, I tell my family, I tell my children, the more people in your life that can love you as a child, the better you're going to be. And that's truly what it is. But with those philosophies come a change and a shift in dynamic of how we define a family. With inflation and the cost of living, that changes how families are working together and what it's going to take. And we may want the laws to come in and provide protections, or maybe we don't. Are there situations where we're like, hey, government, hey, laws, get out of this and leave this between us and our family? Really, there's no wrong answer, but I'm definitely interested in the legal challenges that you and your family have faced. By all means, reach out, tell me your stories, let's share, let's talk about it. After all, most change happens when people start yapping. Thanks for tuning in to Gobbles Down, Voices Up. Like what you heard? Then don't just sit there. Subscribe, share, and tell me your thoughts. I'm Rachel King, bringing not just my opinions to the mic, but about the courtroom too. Your part, keep listening, keep engaging, and until next time, let's keep those gobbles down and our voices up. Unmistakably up.